All right, so I want to tell you again that meeting all of you has been terrific. You have a beautiful country. My wife and I did have the opportunity to go on safari. We went to Medikwe. It was absolutely beautiful. We saw beautiful things. I will tell you, I always try to help people in their community for visitors. So from visitors from America, I'm going to give you one small suggestion of hope, one suggestion. And that is when we call you, because we are American Jewish neurotic people, and you say to us, would you like to go on safari? Here's something you do not have to ask us. Would you like to go to the malaria-free zone? No, I want to go to the malaria full zone with a little Ebola and a little E. coli. That's what I want. Don't worry about it. Okay, I was talking at lunch. Somebody was bringing up, we were talking about different struggles of being married. It reminded me of a cute story, cute joke. And it was about way back to Yeshiva Bachram in the days of wagons back in the late 1800s. And they were promised to the two most prominent daughters of the most prominent people in town. So the two of them get on the wagon. It's a 2-day trip. Unfortunately, the wagon is hijacked, and one of these yeshiva bachrim, these eligible young bachelors, is murdered. So only one shows up in town, and both mothers are there with their daughters, and they're arguing, well, obviously, this boy should be for my son. For my daughter. This boy should be for my daughter. So they go to the rabbi and they say, argue their case. And the rabbi says, I don't know what to do. You know what we're going to do? We're going to do like Shlomo HaMelech, like King Solomon, when he said he was going to split the baby. We're going to take this boy, we're going to split him in half, we're going to give half of him to you, to your daughter, half of him to your daughter. So one mother immediately says, what, is that ridiculous? You're going to murder a boy, you're going to give my daughter half a dead body? It's absurd. And the other mother, she said, that's a great idea. Let's cut him in half, rip him apart, give half to my daughter. And the rabbi said, it's settled, she's the mother-in-law. Anyway, it's interesting. I want to get back to the last session and bring it to here. The other important difference between men and women, and it's quite ironic, of course, that I ran out of time, because it is all about time. Time is so important to a relationship, and I know that. You say, that makes a lot of sense. Everybody knows that, but we don't do it. Here's an interesting research. In my research, we started to plot and ask people who were happy and unhappy in their marriages. We said, how much time on a regular basis, on a daily average, do you spend uninterrupted with each other? So people who were happy, they reported that they spend on a daily average more than 30 minutes alone, uninterrupted time chatting with their spouse. People who were unhappy, less than 30 minutes. Think of a continuum, because 25% of happy people, they said they spend on daily average more than 60 minutes uninterrupted time. 25% of unhappy couples, they said they spend less than 5 minutes on average. So it became clear to me that we can sit and talk about communication till we're blue in the face. If you don't have time alone to spend with your spouse, to be able to get the verbal juices going, it really doesn't matter. So I suggest for everybody that you have at least a daily average of 30 minutes time uninterrupted. Now, when I say uninterrupted, right, who's uninterrupted nowadays? Think about our Blackberries and our iPhones and everything. A woman once came to me and she said, I went into Victoria's Secret, a lingerie store. And I said, listen, I really want my husband to be interested in me. Could you please find me something that will make me look like his iPhone? So, it's impossible today. The idea of saying that we're going to sit down, we're going to go out, we're going to turn off our iPhones. I want to tell you, I promise you, your children, the world will survive. They survived before and they're going to survive after. And believe you me, it is a wonderful message to your children. You are training them right when you tell them that our marriage is so important that we're going to have alone time. So if that means that you have to go into your bedroom at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, lock the door, close the door, seclude yourself, tell your kids if they're teenagers that are up, that's fine. If they're kids, get them into bed. But that you spend that time together alone Do it. Do it regularly, and you're going to suddenly find out. You're going to remember why you got married. Now, women, I'm going to tell you this as a small caveat. Sometimes you haven't talked to your husband in so long. Please avoid the urge the first time that you do this exercise to tell him all the idiotic things he's done for the last 5 years. Just keep that in mind, because, he's not going to walk away and say, yeah, I want to do this every night. You know what I'm saying? So, you'll get there. You will get there, but just be able to be with each other. Talk about your day. It's interesting because in my book, Emotional Infidelity, I kind of took a Torah principle and I put it into secular principle in something that was extremely counterintuitive. What is that? Don't have friends, I say, that are members of the opposite sex. Don't have dear friends. Now, you can be cheating on your spouse just from an emotional standpoint. If you are giving the balance, the primary energy of your life, and you're laughing and gossiping and talking and everything with another opposite gender person, so that when by the time you come home, you talked about it, you laughed about it, you're done. You've taken away that energy from your own relationship. You're cheating. You're destroying your relationship. Now, it's counterintuitive because in the world, right, it's a physical infidelity is the issue, and until we get to that, everybody's fine with it. But what they forget is that more than 90% of people who physically cheat in my studies, they had an emotional relationship before, a strong emotional relationship. So it's just an extension of the emotional turmoil that we've been in. The way to prevent any kind of cheating has always been about emotionally staying connected in contact. So therefore I say, please, everybody, one night a week, I want you to have a date night. Now, on this date night, I want you to go out alone, just the two of you. Don't go out with another couple. I know how that is. The men go off with the men, women go off with the women. Just yourselves, minimum 2 hours. If you have little kids, I want you to call a babysitter. I want you to pick one week night or weekend night, the same one. I want you to hire that babysitter for the next few months. Because if you're like me, and since we're Jewish, if you're going to have to pay for the babysitter, you're going to go out no matter what, even though you're tired, right? And when you go out, I want you to talk about everything. But there's 3 things I do not want you to talk about. I do not want you to talk about money, work, or kids. Now, all of you are thinking the same thing, afraid to say it. What are we going to talk about? It's all we ever talk about incessantly, and that's my point. My point is, I promise you that when you were dating and falling in love, you were not incessantly talking about the stresses of money, work, and kids, because if you were talking about that, you never would have gotten married. It's not what got you here. It's not what's going to sustain you. We need to remember it is okay and it is necessary for us to have fun. Fun can be coming here, something philosophical. I don't mean fun, but whatever it is, something that is just between the two of you. My wife and I, when we had 5 kids, the oldest was 6. We had 5 kids, ages 6 and under. We would still have our date night. And sometimes we'd walk around and we'd look at people. We'd say, oh my God, there's all these people out here and none of them need to be diapered. It's amazing. So, that's how you have to reserve that time. I understand that life is not going to be always sipping champagne in the jacuzzi. That's not the idea. You will spend more time parenting your kids than being out alone with your spouse. But you need to have a marriage-centered lifestyle. You need to be thinking, how do I keep the energy? What am I learning new about my spouse? What am I learning? Learn something new together. Read a sefer, a Torah portion together. Do something online together. Take a new class, something as we grow together. That's really the important thing. Very often we have to remember, I'll tell you a very poignant joke. A guy hires a private investigator. He thinks his wife is cheating. So the private investigator calls him a day after he hires him. Says, I got some news for you. Let's get together. He gets them together. Says, here is a photograph with your wife and the guy you think she's cheating with at the afternoon soccer game, cheering in the stands. Here she is at a sports bar at dinner, playing pool with this same guy. Here she is at midnight at a club, dancing on the table with this guy. And the guy says, oh my gosh, I'm shocked. And the PI says, I know, so many men are shocked when their wives are cheating. He says, no, I'm not surprised she's cheating. I can't believe she can have so much fun. And the poignant part of the story is, of course, never to blame the person who's cheated on. That's not the point. But it's just to say that, if you want your spouse to be more fun, well, what's your role in that? You're going to bring out that fun. Two people have to decide we're going to cut off the rest of the world. We're not going to talk about the stress of the kids. We just got to stop incessantly worrying and stressing. We are allowed to go out and just be able to have some fun together. And that's what you have to keep in mind of keep regenerating. That's one of the major things that successful couples do that failed do not. We're going to go through some lists and talk about some of those major differences. One of the primary differences I find between successful and failed couples is how they deal with conflict. See, failed couples come to me and they say this. They say, we were arguing and fighting until 4 a.m, and then we kissed and made up, and everything's fine. I know what happened. What happened to that couple is they fought until they ran out of gas. And then they made up because what else are they going to do? And a week later, they are spitting nails at each other because the same problem has come up. Successful couples are quick to get to resolution. Successful couples resolve problems together. They say, okay, listen, we got the problem. We were at this event. I left you alone. You didn't know anybody. You couldn't find me. I didn't keep in touch with you. I came home late. Whatever it is. Let's talk about what I'm going to do differently. We stayed with your mother. That didn't work out. Let's figure out. We'll go to a hotel next time. Whatever it is, let's resolve the problem. We get to resolution. Not enough people do that. And if you don't do that, you're just arguing and arguing and arguing. And if you're arguing until you think you're going to win, I got news for you. Remember the old adage, it's one of the simplest and best things you can learn in marriage. You can win, you know it? You can win, or you can be happy. Two people fight in a marriage. You fight for an hour, 2 hours, 3 days. In the end, you win. Really? So what? What did you gain? That's not the point. It's not the point. The next thing that successful couples do in the same line is they see themselves as a team. They see themselves as a team. They talk a lot about we, what we're doing, and not talking about the royal we, what we're doing. When my wife she's the other part of my neshama. For all I know, everyone thinks that on this world, we all know why we're here, whatever. For all I know, I'm here to take care of my wife's neshama. I don't know. It's interesting, when Avram walked out of the Kivshan Aish, when he walked out of the fiery furnace that Nimrod put him in. If you or me were Avraham, right, we'd think, I'm pretty hot stuff. You know what I'm saying? Watch what I'm going to do next. But our rabbis tell us that the reason he was saved was because Yitzchak was not yet born. So Avram wasn't saved because at that moment God needed his great deeds. He was only kept alive because he needed to get that other neshama in town. Who knows why you're here? But I do know that the whole process, if you really want to believe, and you need to, that we have a neshama in us and that it is connected, we need to be soulful with our spouse. We need to think, what soulful things are we going to do? How are we going to grow together? Somebody mentioned to me before about music. That brain waves change when listening to music. If you've ever listened to music together is my point. If you've ever seen research on NDEs, near-death experiences, very common example of people who think that they're in Shamayim or feel that way, that they hear tremendous symphonies, all different ones, but somehow they all make sense, they come together. The Leviim, in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, they sang as a choir by the Beis Hamikdash. Do things that make you soulful together. Make sure, ask yourselves, what are those things that we can do that will move us forward in that direction? So team, last year I broke my ankle playing basketball. I know. What the heck was I doing playing basketball? I got it. Oprah said to me, I told Stedman to stop playing basketball also. You can't play basketball. I was playing with my kids, and I'm a guy. So it was 2020. 21 was the game, and I'm playing against my Mr. Universe 18-year-old son, and one little pop from him, and I went flying and broke my ankle. But the point I'm making is that I didn't look at my right leg and say, man, I really hate you, right leg. Why aren't you working? What is wrong with you, right? You don't do that because you're the same body. You don't look at a part of your body and get angry at it as a specific outside of you. That's the same thing with your spouse. My wife is a part of me. I'm a part of her. This is not something separate and outside myself. Like we said before, I need her. She needs me. We got to get to this through this world and the next world and whatever's going on together. So when you see that, it makes a difference in how you react. Let me tell you something else that successful couples do that failed couples do not do. They recall the good things. They recall the good things. Lots of times, your spouse really upsets you. Really upsets you. That's the time that you have to recall all the good things that have been happening. You remember, your spouse, guess what? Your spouse is not staying up late at night thinking about how they can hurt you. That's not what they're doing. But guess what? They're human. They're in a bad mood. They haven't eaten for a while. Whatever's going on. They had a sleepless night. Don't take it as personally. Remember, okay, I'm hurt now, but you know something? Think about all the good things my spouse has done. Okay, so he, she, they did this, but they've done so many loving things as well. Successful couples are always very, very interested in being able to do that. Another thing that successful couples do not do is they don't criticize each other. They're not big into the criticism. I don't know where we got this message that we're going to get married and we're going to change, we're going to make everything different about the other person. I know you women like to think that. But you women, you go out and date, you think, is he changeable enough? That's your basic decision. Can I work with him? You know what I'm saying? Anyway, there's a famous book, How to Make Friends and Win People, or whatever, Dale Carnegie, How to Win People and Manipulate the Heck out of them. I don't know, something like that. Remember that one? So anyway, his first rule, never criticize. And he talks about these mobsters who were captured, and they were giving excuses. So he said, if these filthy, thieving, murdering mobsters can't take criticism, you think your spouse or your kid can take criticism? So we really should be careful about criticism. See, very often, we have to think to ourselves, is this criticism necessary? How important is it for me to be able to have this critique versus being able to accept? Has the world put on me? Where has this come from, this need to criticize in this particular situation? Let me give you an example. Many years ago, I go to France for my first time with my kids, and we went in the winter. We homeschooled so we could go off season. So the Mona Lisa, I wanted to go see the Mona Lisa. And we could see, there's no line. We're just standing there looking at the Mona Lisa. And my kids and my wife, they studied, and they're wooing, and they're, oh my gosh, whatever. And I'm looking at the Mona Lisa. And I have one thought, and this is living in my head. I looked at the Mona Lisa and I said, man, that Mona Lisa, the Mona Lisa is no size 2. You know that? Have you seen her? She is a bit of a gazinta woman, this Mona Lisa. Now, I started to look at art. Okay, that was many years ago. I started to look at Picasso's The Lovers. I went online, started looking at these things. Arm around a woman. She's a wide woman. She's a wide woman. Rodin's The Kiss. Remember that beautiful thing where, like, the lovers, the guy's over here and she's turning. And I saw the sculpture. And I saw that as she's turning, like a whole ball of tummy is floating with her over on the side. Malol, if you ever see his torsos of women, wide-hipped women, and I think to myself, these people lived in the 1900s. Not long ago, that woman was beautiful. The women of today who are skinny, they were sickly years ago. So, if I'm a man and I'm looking at my wife, maybe I should say to myself, what's going on in my head? Is it genetic, really, or maybe it's societal? Maybe I can talk myself into loving my spouse for who they are. Because that's why we got married. I didn't get married for my wife to tell me who I'm not. I got married to find out that she loves me for who I am. And that makes me a better person. So yes, of course, sometimes you have to critique. But not always. Now, I'll turn around because you women, you do it as well. You know? You watch Pretty Woman, Richard Gere, and if you remember that movie, He's all man. He's broad. He's in expensive suits. He's a huge company mogul, just eating and chewing and destroying companies in his way. You know, somehow this is strong, and you're married to this wonderfully sweet little bent over guy who's got those patches on the elbows, you know what I'm saying, with the jackets, although they're very, very stylish in some places. I've talked a lot, so every time somebody comes up and says, hello, thank you very much. Anyway, yeah, and you have to make it, maybe that's beautiful. He's a teacher. Maybe the fact that he's affecting lives, you should see that and be so proud of that. Just because society tells you to look at something else, you don't have to. So make sure that before you criticize, that you have a sense of whether it's even necessary. And if you do, make it about yourself. Make it about yourself. If you want to get healthier, thinner, broader, smarter, whatever it is, say, let's do this together. You know, let's not just put it on somebody else. Do this for me. You want your spouse to talk nicer to you. Let's make a project to talk nicer to each other, and let's make that happen. You got to recall the good things. You know, none of us are perfect. I often tell people, it's interesting on this topic, that when you marry somebody, we all have problems. So we like slices of bread. Everybody gets a loaf of bread, and you like to take out little slices. I have news for you when it comes to marriage. You married the whole loaf. Now, what do I mean by this? What I mean by this is that it's interesting that the very things you love about your spouse, the very things, the very personality that you love about your spouse often carries with it the very things you don't like about your spouse. So I'm going to be stereotypical, pardon me. So if you're married to a guy and, you know, he's the CEO of a company and he's ordering around 300 people every day, but when he comes home, couldn't he be a little more relaxed? Just don't be so controlling and in charge. Well, I got news for you. The same personality that you like, that he's capable, that he's strong, that he takes care of you financially, is the same personality that makes him come home and he just can't be so spontaneous and lackadaisical. Now, I'm not suggesting that he shouldn't try and you shouldn't talk about it, but just keep in mind that that's attached. You love your wife because she's so spontaneous. She's so fun-loving. You love that she brings that to life. But, my gosh, she can't put and record all the checks in the darn checkbook. Well, guess what? That same personality flows with each other. The very spontaneity and the very sweet, happy-go-lucky personality is not the same personality that's going to be sitting there and recording everything exactly. Let's talk about how important it is to remind each other how much we love each other. There's a story about a couple who's childless, and they come to Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. And they've been married 10 years. It was in the days that if they couldn't have children, that they would separate. They would divorce. So Reb Shimon Bar Yochai says to them, you should divorce. And the husband says to the wife, listen, tomorrow we're going to separate. Tonight, let's spend time together. And I love you, and the fact that we came into this marriage with good hopes, let's leave that way. Let's have a night together. And whatever is in my house, he says to her, whatever you love the most in my house, of all these possessions, whatever, take one thing to your father's house tonight before you go. And they spend time, they eat dinner, and they drink, and they get drunk, and whatever, and he falls asleep. And the next morning, he awakes, and he looks around and doesn't recognize where he is because he's in her father's home. And she says, you are the thing I love most in our home. And they go back to Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, and he gives them a bracha, and they have a child. So the question, of course, this is the way my mind works. The same darn question I asked that good witch during the Wizard of Oz. Why don't you tell her at the beginning that if she just clicks her darn heels 3 times, she's going to go home? Why do you have to make her go through all that trouble? So I asked the same thing, Lahavdil of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, right? Why is it? Just tell him at the beginning. because he needed to make sure that they understood that they were committed and that they really expressed their love. Families come from the love that comes from that marriage. If we lose sight of that, we lose sight of everything, I guarantee it. Successful couples, they can't hear "I love you" enough. They can't have enough hugs. They can't have enough sweetness, enough kindness. They're okay with it. They don't make jokes at each other's expense. They are focused on the prize of being together and loving in that way. Successful couples, another note, another point. Successful couples are very quick to apologize and forgive. We do make mistakes. When we make a mistake, we have to apologize. And very often, when we apologize, it's not a really good apology. We have no idea what we're really apologizing for. You know the old thing, "I don't know what I did, but I'm sorry. I'm sorry for whatever you think I did. I'm sorry for hurting your feelings, although I don't think you should have felt that way." These are not apologies. The point we talked about, listening to each other, that's what an apology is. Very often people say, "I can't forgive." And I say to them, maybe you can't forgive because you really haven't been apologized to. Because when somebody really apologizes and says, "I understand how it felt to be you. I feel bad that I did this to you. I feel bad that I caused this." Now, you can not give an excuse. You can give the circumstances. "I just had a terrible day at work. I was sick. I thought something else was going on. I still shouldn't have done that, but please understand that's how it came about." You can give some color behind what happened, but you can't dismiss the feelings of the other person. And so often, it goes away so fast for these successful couples, because when they apologize, truly apologize, it's over. It's over. It's easy to forgive. It's easy to forget under those circumstances. So don't fight the feeling of wanting to know how I hurt somebody. I know it's very hard and it's very tense. When your spouse is upset with you, the first thing to do is to bristle and to act up and defend and excuse, whatever, instead of saying, "Okay, let me hear what I did, because I want to know and I want to be able to truly understand, and I want to get better at this. I want to apologize and I want to resolve how we're not going to have this happen again." Successful couples are good listeners. There's no doubt about it. They really, really listen to each other. Now, men and women, God created us as different people. He did it for a reason. We're supposed to be different. You as a man and a woman, you're supposed to look at your spouse and say, "Really? What the heck are you talking about? Where did you even come up with that?" That's supposed to happen. It's a good thing. How do you think we grow in life? We grow in life by seeing someone else's perspective. When you go and you see a movie, or when you go and read a book, whatever it is, you know what you're doing? You're allowing another perspective in. The whole idea of us being different is that gives us an opportunity to become greater people. If you walk away today with your opinion and only your opinion, and you haven't heard what anybody else said, you're going to be a moron. Nobody wants to be with you. You just want to tell everybody what you want to say. Now, that's good stuff. It's good to share. We need to share, but we need to be better listeners. We need to listen and stop talking quite as much. Listen, you have to know this. Again, I don't know if your friends are going to tell you, but when you're talking to somebody, how long do you think the other person is really listening to what you're saying? Present company excluded. How long? 30 seconds? 50 seconds? How long can you think before you start saying in your head, "I know my response, I know what I want to say, I just got to wait for this person to take a breath so I can say it," right? You can't focus. We want to be interactive. We want to hear, we want to listen, we want to talk. That's the kind of stuff that we want to do. We want to be able to have that kind of communication pattern, and we want to be out and about so that we have the time to do it. Give people a chance to talk. Give your spouse a chance to talk so you can listen and learn from those differences. Try something new. That's the whole resolution concept. My wife wanted a brand new dining room table. I wanted a pool table. That's a pretty tough difference. We didn't have room for both in the Miami Beach house. So, in true man form, I went online and I found a combination beautiful dining room that also functions as a pool table. Got to make the chairs a little higher to get up. It's a little higher than the normal one, but that's okay. We've got to be able to resolve and listen to each other and be able to go on vacation. How many men and women go on vacation and love to do the exact same thing? Yeah, what are you going to love to do the exact same thing? My wife and I don't love to do the exact same thing. We'll take a few days. We'll talk to each other. What do you want to do? What do you do? We'll swap. We'll figure out the different things that we want to do so that both of us can be happy. I can't tell you how many people go on vacation. It's such a simple example. Failed couples, they go on vacation and they have a lousy time. Successful couples, they go on vacation, they have a terrific time. Well, you think the weather's only good for the successful couples? That's not what's going on. It's that those successful couples, they're having a good time with each other. They've planned, they know kind of what they're doing, they're switching off what they're doing, they're listening to each other. That's what makes it pleasant. The rest of it doesn't matter nearly as much. Okay, now I'm going to go back and look at the time and be a smart person. Hold on a second. Justin gave me a watch. It's like some kind of hologram or something. What is this here? Okay, we're good. We are good. I want to talk a little bit about something else that successful couples do, which gets into a deeper issue that is so crucial to what I do in my life to help people change. Successful couples look within. They look within themselves and they try to change for the better who they are. Give me a few minutes to explain to you how the mind works. A person of average intelligence, science has proven through brain imaging studies. Brain imaging studies are studies where they can now go inside the brain, they can see different things flashing and see the brain lighting up. A person of average intelligence has about 50 to 70,000 thoughts per day. Per day. All of you are Jewish, so you're way above the average. So you're having well over 100,000 thoughts per day. The brain dumps 99% of those thoughts. 99% of those thoughts. So think about it. You come to a busy street, the busiest street in Johannesburg. Don't tell me what it is because I'm not going to pronounce it correctly. Okay? Your version of Broadway. Two of us are standing there. We're about to cross. We do this. And we cock it and we cross. Well, you know what we just did? Well, we did this and we did that. Yeah, I saw a car over there. We saw that car. We took a picture of it. And a second later, we saw how much closer the car. We made a mathematical equation about how far that car's coming and how fast it's going to come toward us. We then made another mathematical equation. We figured about how much time and how many steps it would take us to get across the street. We looked at the crosswalks. We looked at the little sign person there, red and yellow and green and everything. And we did all of this while we were talking to each other, totally unnoticed. A cognitive therapist named Beck proved that people who had car accidents, the majority of them had had a depressive event within 24 hours. Because when you have a depressive event, you're not as sharp. Something's going on in the subconscious of your mind. Those thousands of thoughts that are being dumped, you're not realizing it, and you're putting yourself in potential danger that you would not have otherwise. So the fact is that so much is going on with us that we don't realize. And until you realize it, you're not going to be able to change. It's very, very hard to actually change. You can't say to somebody who's nervous, don't be nervous. Don't be nervous. My father, God bless him, 85 years old, strong guy. He was weightlifting and running, in the 60s, way before the curve. I'll never forget when he had his stroke. He was 75 years old, He has a stroke. My mother calls me. She says, Dad heard from the doctor that he's not going to be able, he's going to have to make some changes. You're not going to be able to do everything he's been doing. So I thought, some kind of intimacy problem, although I don't know why my mother would be sharing that with me. Don't form an image. And she says to me, the doctor said that Dad can no longer bench press 300 pounds. I said, the man's 75, he's bench pressing 300 pounds? What's wrong with this guy? So my father, he was a tough guy. He's from the old generation. Grew up poor, made a man of himself. If you said to him, Dad, I'm kind of nervous, he would say, well, don't be nervous. That's what he would say to me. Years and years as we go through this. If I hurt my arm playing basketball, I could barely lift it. I'd say, oh my God, Dad, I can't lift my arm like this. I can't go like this. So he would look at me and he would say, hey, don't go like this. So you can't say to somebody, hey, change, come on, don't be so nervous, talk more, be the life of the party, be funnier, be whatever. You can't do that. You can't do that. Be nicer. Don't be as mean. Don't scream as much. Don't get as angry. Don't be as upset at the kids. Okay, you can say it, but how do you really change it? I say to you this. All those processes are coming from our childhood itself. I want each one of you to imagine that when you're a child, anything you are taught about from your environment is what you believe is your truth. Good or bad. Some good things, some bad things. My mother, she was a fantastic mother. When I was 6 years old or 5 years old, I made her the ugliest project. It was a green and orange misshapen clay ashtray that I gave her for Mother's Day, and my mother never smoked a day in her life. But man, that ashtray, you would have thought that the Oscar from the Academy Awards was in our house. It was prominently displayed as if I was an artist. And you know something? She lied to me, my mother. That was a piece of garbage that the neighbor would have thrown away in a second. She lied to me, for heaven's sakes. Of course, we make our children, we want our children to believe they're great. We want to tell them whatever we want to tell them, that's what they're going to believe. Unfortunately, it works in the opposite way. If we made our children, or we as children felt that we weren't just so great, that our parents didn't love us so much. And God bless our parents. They could have been depressed themselves. They could have had an economic turn. They could have had their own parents passing. I mean, it's not always that parents are bad. That's not my message. My message is that reach back. Good couples, they look at themselves and they say, what's in me? How am I participating? What did my parents teach me in their marriage? And maybe whatever they taught me, I don't have to apply it to if it was a bad message or a message I don't like, maybe I have to realize that just because that's how I was raised and that's natural for me, I have to decide, am I going to be Seal and Dave Neuman's son, or am I going to be Gary Neuman? Now's the chance for me to change. Now's the chance for me on a daily basis to get up and say, I'm going to shift. If I want to be nicer, if I want to be kinder, if I want to be more touchy-feely, whatever I want to be, I can be that. But I have to understand that I might have gotten a very different message from my childhood. And if I can change that message, if I can focus on that message, I'm going to be a winner in my marriage. Good couples, successful couples are not looking and pointing at the other one. Don't any of you come to me after this talk and say, thank you so much for these talks. I wish my spouse was here. He or she really needs it. Stop thinking about what the other person is doing. Take the leadership role yourself. You become a better person. You take that role. You know what's going to happen? The energy in your relationship changes. It always is going to get better. Your spouse is going to say, what's happening? This is nice. You like this? Yeah, good. Let's do it together. I like it too. I've been focusing. I've been working on this. You make that mark. You go forward, and that's what's going to make a change. So upon ending, and I'm still going to speak at the plenary, I'm going to do my best to go over time there too. It's hard to kick off a speaker when everybody's there and, everybody's, yeah. There's a wonderful Gemara. It's hard to say my favorite Gemara. I'm not sure you're allowed to say favorite, but one of my favorite Gemaras. And as it relates to today, it so boggles the mind. The Gemara says that in the times, the Holy Temple times, the Beis HaMikdash, there were 2 days a year that the eligible bachelorettes would parade in front of the eligible bachelors, and they would, get to talking and shidduchim and get together and date and stuff. One of those 2 days, you'll never guess unless you know the Gemara, was Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur. Can you imagine? We're sitting Yom Kippur, what we're doing. Can you imagine Yom Kippur? We're going to send out all the guys and gals together, get them talking, get them schmoozing. Let's get on with this. How was that the time to go ahead and do this? And I saw two beautiful reasons. One, because on Yom Kippur, we're stripped down. We're a soul. Our soul is brightest. And anybody who's been married more than a year knows that the physical, it ain't perfect, right? As we age, we can't expect it's going to be connecting to the inside. That's what's going to keep us for this world and take us into the next. So the idea that these people can meet when they're feeling so soulful, so spiritual, That's when we wanted to get them together. But the second reason, I think, is just music to my ears. And that is that on Yom Kippur, we free ourselves of sin. We become so one with God, something starts over. You know what starts over at the end of Yom Kippur? We have unlimited hope. We are no longer shackled by our sins, by our problems, by our neurosis. When we finish Yom Kippur, we're so clean that we think to ourselves, the future is bright. The future, we can do anything. That was the moment that the rabbis wanted people to fall in love. Because they wanted these young people to remember always that through love, there is limitless future, limitless hope. There is no limit. If you think about what has been done in the name of love in our world, it is otherworldly. It does not make sense. It is absolute, has God written all over it. There is nothing stronger than the power of what love is between spouses, between families, between parents and children. So that's that message of Yom Kippur, and that's the message I leave with you. I spent a couple hours today or less talking about marriage, some time this morning talking about kids. And you could get my DVDs and get 7-8 hours on there. And it'll never be enough. Because the power of love is limitless. But you're not going to feel that unless you make it real for yourself. Now I know it's a simple message. You can walk away and people sometimes say to me, Gary, and I don't know if they mean this as a compliment or not, I think they do, it was a really nice talk, really simple but good to remember. That's what they tell me. And I say to them, if it was that simple, you wouldn't need to be reminded about it. So maybe it sounds simple, but it ain't going to happen unless you make it happen. So start, make your marriage better, make that relationship, focus on your love, and you will see the benefits immediately, and it will build exponentially. Thank you so much. You've been so kind and wonderful. I want to come back.